I am Chris Brogan. I am so lucky to be here with Waylon Lewis, the publisher of elephantjournal.com. Waylon, part of the reason I wanted to have you in is to talk about publishing, but it's really funny. When I went in to look at stuff, I feel in a way I've got your number, because I feel like, out of all the people who are, self-proclaimed Dharma brats and all that, there's this whole other sway, and it's the Lululemon soft clothing. We are going to change our name to something Sanskrit sounding type, and then there's sort of this Elvis punk rock Waylon Lewis model. And so I'm curious, clearly you're just being you, but I'm curious how much you continue to work on making that the strong brand of, Elephant Journal isn't just a shiny yoga journal style or whatever.
Yeah, it's actually it's a great question. It's got very little to do with me being me. It's actually more, I grew up in this American Buddhist community in Boulder, Colorado, and there was a lot of talk about this notion of spiritual materialism. So a lot of people tend to get into yoga or into meditation, or they have a little stone Buddha on top of their toilet, and a quote book by the Dalai Lama, and they tote around their Whole Foods shopping bag, and a lot of it is kind of lifestyle. And I really dislike that term. I really think, Buddhism, which I grew up in, is not fashion. It's really, the point is to be of benefit to other people, which is not unique to Buddhism at all. And to enjoy life and to be present. And none of that has anything to do with Lululemon or any sort of brand or lifestyle. So all of that's fine, but we try and regard that with hopefully a sense of humor and, self-awareness.
Sure. And I guess I'm curious that, and you called this out very recently the other day on elephantjournal.com. You were saying that, you even played a little quote of the dude from The Big Lebowski, just saying, I think that's your opinion, man.
Man, that's just your opinion, man.
Right. And it's perfect, because I think we get into these very dogmatic conversations, and I've got to imagine that you are sometimes a bit of a lightning rod. You, the organization, Elephant Journal, are a bit of a lightning rod. To that point, I'm going to throw that towards a question. This is something that my girlfriend Jacqueline Carley told me to ask you. She was the one who actually turned me on to you. I think I told you that we were both laying down, and I looked over at what she's reading, and she's reading Elephant Journal, and I was just like, what is this that I should know more about? So we're going to get into that deeper. So here's your question. What do you think about this chatter that's going around that EJ uses sexy ads and racy dramatic headlines to grab readers, and that sort of makes it kind of smutty? This is there's a perception that that's what happens out there. And I just consider it good copywriting because of my marketing background, but that's the question.
Well, I think it's somewhat true. I've been a off and on successful blogger on Huffington Post. I do a lot less now. And I definitely am less loyal to Huffington Post because of their, constant sort of nip-slip blogs and, sexy this and that, and kind of the sort of cheap blogs. So I definitely love sex, and I think a lot of us do. It definitely grabs eyeballs. But even from a business point of view, I would say it is bad for Elephant or any blog to use sex or to use anything to get readers, because you may get readers short term, but you'll lose loyalty. So we really try and strongly only use sexy images when it's actually appropriate to the content. And yeah, we just celebrate sex. A lot of our readership is 85% female, 80% female. They have no problem when we put a topless photo of Ryan Gosling up there. We get cat calls and whistles and more please kind of comments, which I always regard rather humorously. But if we put up a sexy photo of a woman, we'll get dozens of comments saying we're sexist or objectifying the woman. And that may be true. The blog really does need to earn that image and not use sex, but hopefully celebrate sex, whether it's men or women or gay or whatever the orientation or focus is.
Sure. So there's a question that goes into that too. This is another thing Jack was asking was, how do you vet your writers and contributors? I mean, when you start out in any of these kinds of ventures, you're sort of thinking, hey, I think I'm going to do this. And then you probably, if you're like most organizations, you go through that crud, I need help. So you just sort of throw everybody in. Then somebody takes a wrong turn and kind of crushes part of your perceptions. And then you have to vet it slightly different. So what is your process now for that?
Well, I think you nailed it. I mean, I don't know if you're aware or your fans are aware, but we were a print magazine for 6.5 years, and we went national, and we were obviously very uptight, hopefully in a good way, editorially about who we printed and what kind of articles we printed, and we edited them down to the living inch to get them to fit properly and all that. And going online, I probably took about half of the Huffington Post model. I definitely, at least 50%, regard them as innovators and really perhaps the first blog to really treat online media as online media. They really didn't have any qualms about trying to do proper journalism or anything like that. We are trying to, do both at the same time, have some journalistic standards, which they're doing a lot more of continually as they have more money and more income. But as Huffington Post did, anyone can write on Elephant at any time. We're pretty hungry and desperate for content. And I regard it really as sort of the Wild West. I mean, if someone puts up an article that makes me gag about how, we get these classic articles like, I love crystals and rainbows and unicorns and they make me feel special and, hug me, these kind of new agey articles, that's fine because it's Web 2.0. So people can comment, including myself, and say, those are beautiful sentiments, but, how are you walking your talk? Do you do your dishes? Are you kind to your children? Whatever it is. It's easy to talk the spiritual talk, but to walk and the talk and be a good person, you don't need to be spiritual at all, So.
I'm with you there. So let's branch out a little. Let's talk a bit about how you've brought in social media and all that. When I went around and looked at your Twitter accounts, one of the things that I had noticed is it's still sort of a push medium for you. It is primarily you announcing stuff out, and that's sort of how you've used all 4 accounts that I've seen. Elephant Sexy, Elephant Journal, etc. Where there's a lot of people out there who you're doing it wrong. And then there's another bunch of people who say, no, that's perfect. You're a publisher. That's what you're doing. What's your philosophy behind using the tools the way you do? And or why do you choose not to do more replies in your stream, so to speak?
Well, not to be too political, but I agree with everything you just said. You interviewed Guy Kawasaki recently, and he was saying how he handles all of his Google Plus himself.
Right.
And I handle all of Elephant Journal myself. And we've won nationally, as you may know, most votes for Shorty Awards for Green 2 years in a row. So while it is a push primarily, I will reply if someone, has a question or a problem. Often I'll DM though. I don't reply frequently. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that I handle it myself means I'm writing those pushes myself, tailoring them to the present moment, my mood, how I want to deliver it. I don't just copy and paste the title and put in the link usually. So it is sort of fun and human. And I think that's important with this social media stuff, to keep it kind of direct and personal and human. Otherwise, it's ineffective and people feel like you're spamming them, and we wouldn't get traffic out of that. So again, from a business point of view, it makes sense to be personal about it.
So as a publisher, are you finding that you can't survive without the social media push anymore? And I say that saying that, I've seen in your interviews where you were talking about how, until recently numbers were just up. But it's a whole different world out there. And because everyone is so consumption starved, I think without social media, we can't get there. What's your take on that?
Well, I think Facebook alone is 48% of our readership numbers, our traffic. Twitter has been really strong for us. I recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, got into Reddit, and I probably spend an embarrassing amount of time on Reddit. And I certainly have, things I don't love about it, but overall I find it really an innovative, kind of exciting model. And I'm trying to actually apply a lot of that now from a publishing point of view to elephantjournal.com. Yeah, without social media, we would go out of business in a week. To answer your question simply,
yeah. I think it's just amazing how that existence has changed. I want to talk a little bit about your methodology at elephantjournal.com. When you go there, it's a very visual site for one thing. It's even your ad placement is it's a rotating ad placement, which I kind of like because it does draw your eyes. Some people, I'm sure, complain because they want everything to be pure and whatever, but it works. And if these are your buyers, and when I'm looking at
with people complaining if they want to pay a healthy subscription, but
exactly.
we're dependent on advertising for about 30% of our revenues.
Sure, but so then the model, the way I understand it, is I get to look at 3 or so articles a day. Free, and then after that, then you offer it and say, well, if you're taking this much of a bite, you should really get a subscription. And how is that working? Because I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was the coolest idea, and I was thinking, how do I do this on my site? I thought it was a neat way to go at it. So how is that working for you?
Yeah, I'm actually working with people. I called it the pay gate as opposed to paywall. So paywalls obviously have been, dramatically unsuccessful. Saying, "Welcome to our site, please pay." People. In the new media world, people just click off that and move on. I can get my article from 800 other places. I have no relationship with this site. I'm out of here. So I basically looked at our numbers, and 98% of our readers read 3 articles or less a day. So I said, well, I'm going to give it free to those people because I don't want to lose traffic. I want to gain traffic. I want to become, I want to be the next Huffington Post, maybe with a little bit more journalism in there. I want to grow, so I don't want to reduce that. But the 2% of readers who are, for whatever reason, reading the most, those are the people most inclined to be willing to pay something. They have the most relationship to Elephant. They're clearly the most enthusiastic. So we say, as you said, thanks for reading so much Elephant. If you'd like to keep reading, please consider paying $1 a month. We made it ridiculously low. PayPal, unfortunately, and all that doesn't allow us to say it's 10 cents a day or something like that. We'd love to do something like that. So I basically did a much less sophisticated version of what the New York Times did a couple months after we did. We actually, if I had money for PR and all that, I would have hit that hard because when I looked for models for new media sites who are making money off of monetizing our traffic and our readers and subscriptions, there aren't many. Obviously, Wall Street Journal and such who have financial news that people need. But for a site like Elephant, we don't have a ton of world-changing, unique content. It might be good, but you could probably live without it. I think we really innovated and just figured it out. And a lot of it I did we were a print magazine back in the day. You can see a couple of these copies back there. Mm-hmm. And I really just had this sort of, I think, healthy ego and said, I think people are willing to pay for media. If we can find a way to make it easy for them, it doesn't waste their time, and affordable, I think people will do it. And literally within 1 week, it was 60% of our revenues.
I think that's huge. I mean, that speaks for itself. Waylon, one of the things I was interested in you was that, I mean, you do come from this, Dharma background, grown up Buddhist and all that, but you also English major parents, lots of journalists and whatnot in the blood. You had journalism education as well, and one of the things you just said was like the Huffington Post, but with more journalism. Which if I had Ariana right here, I'm sure she would be like, "Oh, darling, I do plenty of journalism," but it's not as true as it used to be. When she launched, it was the gold standard. I guess one thing I wanted to ask is, journalists aren't the best business people. Where did you get from your Buddhism background and your I'm a good journalist type background, the idea of how to make money? Because I would say that for the last 4 years, journalists have been running around like chickens in the yard with no head anymore saying, I don't know what to do anymore because the publisher can't help me. So where did you get that? How did that come to you?
Well, great question. My father and his whole generation of journalists are far better journalists than I am, and most of them are out of work. My father, 10, 20 years ago was making a healthy, living, and now he's, with all respect and love to him, he's like, a freelance hack on some level. So it's really heartbreaking for me. Journalism is called the fourth estate, the watchdog of democracy. Thomas Jefferson said that, an informed active citizenry is essential to a functioning democracy. Without an independent and strong journalism media environment, our whole national experiment that is the United States of America is a little bit, has a problem. I'm trying not to swear. I'm not sure if we swear on your show.
We can swear on my show.
All right. And I feel like it's essential for this do-gooder environment that Elephant is in, focusing on green and organics and, healthy living and all this stuff, to show that can be good business. And I want to be filthy rich. I think that there's too few sort of do-gooder kind of businesses that actually do well financially. And if we can show that you can do well by doing good, that will hopefully inspire many, many more business entrepreneurs to say, hey, we can make our money and be good for the environment and, focus on social issues that are important. So, yeah.
I'm glad that's come into the vogue a little bit more. I mean, I think that there's so many more social mission focused companies, the Tom Shoes companies of the world. I mean, his new book is swell, by the way. I think that it's great that you're showing that, from a publisher perspective, and just saying that, I think journalism and business, definitely have a place together. And to your point, great journalists like your father, find themselves just kind of humping along, trying to find, the same experience that they'd been used to, whereas you've been required to innovate, because you can't even get in the door at a place like that any longer, because there's just too many people scrabbling for the same job, I guess.
Well, you just said it. I've been required to innovate. It's like necessity is the mother of invention. I've really had to figure out how to not only stay in business, but, in order to grow, we need to make money. And I've looked at models like Kickstarter, and Tom Shoes is very inspiring, of course, with their one-for-one model. Threadless is a major inspiration. Reddit now is an inspiration. There's a lot of models out there for both building traffic and readership numbers and making money. Threadless has, done a fair amount. It was called Idea of the Year by New York Times a couple years ago, to sort of save designers who are going through a similar thing that journalists are going through. And all these designers now can make money off their designs for these T-shirts and all that. I haven't done it yet, but I'm calling it the ecosystem. That's my next sort of hopefully big move, is to have readers basically leave a tip for any writers they like, and then writers can start making money, and that will encourage writers to promote their own work and become little social media engines for Elephant and be more consistent. So I get more content, I get more clicks, they get paid. I can hopefully begin to sort of save journalists and save journalism around the country, and the readers, through very small donations, will fuel that. So that's my next sort of project.
I think it's the right move. Well, I told you let's do 6 minutes, and I've totally blown that. I'm up around almost 20, Waylon. But it's what happens when people with good ideas get involved in front of me. Then I can shake them down and hear a lot about it. So I can find you at elephantjournal.com. I can find you on Google+, on Twitter, all over the place, on Facebook. You're a man of the people in those ways. And I need a few more episodes of Walk the Talk, though. It's been a little slow in production because of all the other business you have to attend to.
Well, we've been broke for a couple years going online, not making as much money as we did when we were a magazine. We're actually restarting. Patagonia has tentatively said they're going to be our first sponsor, and it should be bi-weekly over all of 2012.
It's a beautiful thing to hear. Waylon Lewis, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor.